political. He was an outsider to politics, zero experience or interest in government or politics. He was a comedian and with no manifesto, no party ties. And he does a TV show, a planned TV show called Servant of the People. And the main character in the show does a YouTube video that calls out oligarchs and corruption and eventually becomes popular and is drafted as a protest candidate and eventually becomes president. So Zelensky played on a TV show a person who becomes president by popular demand. In real life, the TV show is supported by an oligarch named Kolomoisky, who owned the TV channel. And Kolomoisky did a huge nonstop promo on that TV show to make it the #1 show. Primetime slots and ads everywhere and crossovers with the news and what have you. 2018, a year before the show goes off the air, Zelensky forms a political party called Servant of the People, the same title as the show. And in no press release, secretly done, and then he does another season of the show, and in April of 2019, he announces his actual candidacy on Instagram. He has no campaign, no rallies, no real platform. He skips the presidential debates. Others attended. He avoids press conferences, and the few that he did were in the beginning were really bad. And Kolomoisky's TV channel gave Zelensky's campaign endless airtime and favorable polls and went after his enemies. The U.S. intelligence agencies, CIA and NSA, helped, U.S. spending $5 billion, by the way, on democracy campaigns in Ukraine, funneled through NGOs. And USAID embeds advisors in his organization to help with the campaign. I'm almost done. And on election day, Zelensky wins with 73% of the vote.
Zelensky came to office 6 years ago on a wave of popular revulsion against corruption. For decades, Ukraine has been synonymous with the word, and Zelensky's promise of a new leader untethered to the system led to a landslide. Now, that bubble has burst bitterly.
In both America and Europe today, the picture of what Mr. Reagan has been doing with Iran has finally begun to clarify. Mr. Reagan's change of heart on Iran seems to have been triggered after the TWA hijack to Beirut. Iran helped free hostages then, and the White House saw an opportunity. This is where Israel came into the picture. According to the Washington Post, Mr. David Kimchi of the Israeli Foreign Ministry suggested arms and spare parts as a way America could show good faith to Iran. By September, it said, the first delivery was underway, flown from Israel via Portugal to Tehran. The authoritative Madrid newspaper El País says at least 5 American arms flights went to Tehran from Spanish airports in the past 2 years. By the spring, Mr. McFarlane was in Tehran itself on a secret 4-day mission. More arms followed in the summer, and another hostage was freed, the Reverend Lawrence Jenko. Then this autumn, the same again, apparently another delivery, another hostage out of Beirut, Mr. David Jacobson. Thus, the two most outspoken opponents of international terrorism, Israel and the United States, participated in moving arms shipments to Iran despite an American-imposed ban on doing so. Any link to hostage releases is still denied.
My fellow Americans, I've said on several occasions that I wouldn't comment about the recent congressional hearings on the Iran-Contra matter until the hearings were over. Well, that time has come, so tonight I want to talk about some of the lessons we've learned. But rest assured, that's not my sole subject this evening. I also want to talk about the future and getting on with things because the people's business is waiting. These past 9 months have been confusing and painful ones for the country. I know you have doubts in your own minds about what happened in this whole episode. What I hope is, not in doubt, however, is my commitment to the investigations themselves. So far, we've had 4 investigations by the Justice Department, the Tower Board, the Independent Counsel, and the Congress. I requested 3 of those investigations, and I endorsed and cooperated fully with the 4th, the congressional hearings, supplying over 250,000 pages of White House documents, including parts of my own private diaries. Once I realized I hadn't been fully informed, I sought to find the answers. Some of the answers I don't like. As the Tower Board reported, and as I said last March, our original initiative rapidly got all tangled up in the sale of arms, and the sale of arms got tangled up with hostages. Secretary Shultz and Secretary Weinberger both predicted that the American people would immediately assume this whole plan was an arms for hostages deal and nothing more. Well, unfortunately, their predictions were right. As I said to you in March, I let my preoccupation with the hostages intrude into areas where it didn't belong. The image, the reality of Americans in chains, deprived of their freedom and families so far from home, burdened my thoughts, and this was a mistake. My fellow Americans, I've thought long and often about how to explain to you what I intended to accomplish, but I respect you too much to make excuses. The fact of the matter is that there's nothing I can say that will make the situation right. I was stubborn in my pursuit of a policy that went astray.
This is not a toothpaste, it's a revolution for your teeth. Remineralized, strengthened teeth, all natural ingredients, essential oils, minerals, salts, Alphabetic Dental Solutions System. That's alphabetic.com/civilization. You know, we're always trying to bring you the best products here that we think will enhance your life, especially if supply chains break down further, or if there's some disruption in our lives here. It seems in the news more and more possible, but hey, who knows? Maybe it's a mind game. But what is not is keeping your dental health up. And not a lot of people are talking about this. We always see the storable foods. But what about dental care during these same emergency situations? Will your toothpaste eventually run out? Well, if it does, then what? So like I say, this whole micro gut biome is driven by your oral cavity first. So take a look at what they have, alphabetic.com/civilization. Every purchase you make helps keep our live radio show and podcast on air, bringing you more information just like this. alphabetic.com/civilization. That link is in the show notes below. And as always, I appreciate your valuable time and joining us in this ever and most important conversation as we move forward in our world. Hey everyone, are you ready to grow your own fresh, delicious vegetables, herbs, and flowers this season? If you're looking for the highest quality heirloom and organic seeds, I've got the perfect company for you, True Leaf Market. They've been a trusted seed company since 1974, offering 3,000 types of non-GMO varieties, everything from classic heirloom tomatoes and peppers to rare herbs, microgreens, sprouting seeds, and beautiful flowers. All those seeds are open pollinated, pure, and perfect for home gardeners or anyone wanting healthy, flavorful produce without chemicals. What I love the most is their huge selection, fast shipping guarantees, plus options for bulk if you're going big. If you're excited to start your garden this year with real, authentic heirloom and organic seeds, click the link in the description box below to check out TrueLeafMarket.com. You won't regret it. Happy planting, and thank you for supporting the channel and this broadcast.
Please remember to sign up for our show notes. With Civilization Cycle podcast, you can learn what to expect as society resets. Agriculture, economy, tech, and history all have mappable cycles, and these cycles affect every aspect of our lives. We can navigate the chaos and thrive together with up-to-date news and information. Also, if you like the content we have here on Civilization Cycle, think about fueling the discussions and the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Civilization Cycle. And thank you for all the support.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on this beautiful blue planet. Well, the world spins a little bit, shall we say, faster in the mind, in the media machine, to get you to believe that things are just okay, handy, hunky-dory. And, well, we see perhaps there's something different going on. This up and down, up and down, up and down, stress one day, everything's fine, war one day, everything's not. You know, it's taking a toll on people mentally. Also, every time you go into the supermarket, you're seeing things rise. Now, all these forecasts are coming out. We're going to look at a couple tonight for the El Nino strength. How intense is that going to be? Through history, you know, in the beginning, a couple months ago, they were warning us, oh, it's going to be the most intense since, say, 1877. and a quarter of the world's crops had difficulty, and like 5% of the people starved or whatever during that time. Comes out we're at about a 75-year intensity event, not all the way back. So again, the messaging of the, let's say, warming media was pushing that as a thing that was, well, natural. And they had to walk it back by about 50%. That's a huge miss, but the American forecasters were calling something around the 80-year range, which it is. So on the scare side of things, to get people really ready and explain away all these crop losses, now we sit here coming in. I did a few videos about the destruction with the heat domes of the corn and wheat crops across Europe. They've lost one third, 30% of all their, what you consider major grain crops like corn and wheat. That's got so hot so fast. First one in the maturation phase. Secondly, this next heat dome, and there's another heat dome setting up. So the plants are too stressed to produce anything. We're going to go 30% down on corn and wheat in Europe. United States, we're coming into the crop tour here next week, so we'll see how atrocious the wheat really is, but they're talking the lowest in 100 years on the wheat production here. Australia wheat production lowest in something like 20 years. So everywhere we look, we're going to start to see grain prices run away. And again, how is this going to be explained? Would it have anything to do with the endless wars and the suppression of fertilizers and taking Ukraine offline, which was one of the world's largest bread baskets? And you start to look at these things as, okay, it's been running for 3 years now, but these disconnected points all funnel into one thing. The food, the ability for us to grow the food and harvest it and get it to market is being disrupted tremendously. And I want to go to, I got Japan Times up tonight, Al Jazeera, Straits Times, that's out of Hong Kong. Take a look at some of the other media, what's going on around the world and how it might fit with what you're seeing or not, if it is diverging or not. The rest of the world's starting to, well, have a financial difficulty out here too. So bonjour to you. And how long before? Hey, I saw France won their match on the World Cup. We'll look at a little World Cupage here today too. America got knocked out 4-1. I think it was the Netherlands that kicked him to the curb. Typhoon's going to be rolling over here in the next day or so. So I went to check out the waves on the East Coast. It had a kind of a weird configuration where it was rolling up north of the island. The south part where we were wasn't getting any rain or wind. It was actually wrapping around the backside of the island, blowing offshore. Some of those waves were good 20-foot faces coming in on some deeper canyon areas that were holding like, wow, that was intense. Many jaws out there. But the world's spinning. And, me and Ransom had some articles we looked about. This one I wanted to start with today, though. We've seen this mission creep everywhere as well. It's creeping over the line. Just in, all new cars sold in the EU are now required to include infrared cameras that monitor the driver's eyes and face for distraction. My personal story, I rented a car in Atlanta and I was driving back to Tennessee. We got back from an overseas flight, got the car and I was just ready. All right, 4 hours and I'm home. Let's just get it done, power through it. 50% of the time, because I was kind of, a little bit tired and my eyes were sort of like, okay. And every time I would sort of get like this, the wheel would shake and then a flashing thing would come on the screen there and say, you need to pull over and take a break, pull over and take a break. I was like, nah, I'll just keep going. And then about 5 minutes later, it would physically shake. First time it scared me to death. Nearly crashed the car. I wasn't expecting the steering wheel to shake. That's what you expect when your tire blew out and you're trying to, couldn't believe it. Scared me literally. And, they should put a warning label. Hey, if you're going to drive the car and it makes you think your steering wheel is going to shake. The thing was more distractive. Every 5 minutes, and then when I'd wake back up again and be totally, and then I would look away and it would shake the wheel again. But that was like last year. And then here we have all new cars. So what happens when they determine that your eyes are too far off the road or you're too tired to drive? Is there going to be a thing that says, well, we determined by your blood pressure on your hands, and I don't even know if there were sensors in the steering wheel. We'll turn off the car. You need to rest before you can continue. This is where it's going. So this infrared cameras monitor the driver's eyes and face for distraction. Now, what happens if you're with your wife or husband or kids or something in the car and you start arguing about something? Do they call the police? Because we think there's going to be a battery of something. We think somebody's going to get beat up in the car. The They're under distress. They're yelling, they're arguing, call the police, and they disable your car, and a flock camera captures you and puts you on the side of the road there. So anyway, this is where we're going with it. And the flock, okay, so in England, they have something called the Blade Runners, where they go in and they cut down all these cameras. Well, there seems to be a lot of flock cameras getting cut down. And I was looking at that, and I would suggest you don't do that because it's a misdemeanor that could require you to get community service if you cut down a flock camera, because it's private property. It's not government property. It's private property owned by a private company. So any kind of, mischievous done with that, you're probably going to get community service if you're actually caught cutting one of those down. So don't do that. Make sure that, you're not destroying public property. So anyway, Ransom, I see you already got it queued up there. Yeah, more and more, because this is going to be a snowball thing here, because a lot of these here in remote locations, and just for me in Tennessee, they pop up way hell out in the countryside. Doesn't take some good old boys but a minute to go down there and just get the saws out or something. But again, not encouraging anything to destroy private property that might get you community service if you're arrested. That would be no good right there.
Yeah, and on top of that, there's a big argument here in the United States whether or not it's legal. Is it constitutional for them to do that?
No.
And I hate to break it, it is. It's in the public eye. So anything that they can see in the public eye, just like you as a photographer, can record it, whatever it is. So
I get it. The recording thing is one thing, but keeping that data, analyzing it, tracking it, and then reselling it, that should be the illegal part.
Should be. No, but as far as like a legal aspect, it's just like a drone from the sheriff's department flying over your home. Anything that it can record. And those things, they're already running into a lot of trouble because they're falsely identifying people for crimes that they had nothing to do with, just because police get that data. Now, the part that becomes unconstitutional is when they use unverified data to drum up, probable cause to go talk to you. And they're doing a lot of that. A lot of arrests are happening out of here, and a lot of them are getting chopped down. Like you said, it's like lumberjacks out there. Whatever the case may be, the robots revolution is here. I also just recently took a trip and got a chance to drive several of the brand new model cars, complete robots. They all the way to the point where you remember when you were a kid and you probably got your first Standard and you would get on a hill and you'd be all nervous because you didn't want it to die while you're riding the clutch and you got it ready to pop in gear and you're trying to go. And if your car wasn't doing well, it would die at stoplights. Even automatic transmissions would do this as well. You would pull up to the stoplight and the RPMs would just go down to nothing. And you're like, oh my God, and you'd see people restarting their car in the intersection. And recently I had heard a lot of people doing that. And I kept thinking, why is everybody's car broken? So now I realize that that's the computer in the car, turns the car off at the stoplight, basically to almost no RPMs, and then restarts it when you tap the gas pedal. And then you got all these onboard, things that the robot's trying to, like you were talking about, intersect, whether you got tired, if there's a blind spot, is occupied by somebody, or if you're getting too close to the white line. All of those had not only vibratory, responses, but also little lights would flash up. Hey, look, you're too close to the center. The bright lights, which, there's a lot of fights and also people getting pulled over when police don't like to be bright lighted. The car does it itself. You just put it on auto. You just drive down the road. Actually, it had everything except for self-driving. And basically you could let go of the wheel. And I was using a brand new Nissan Sentra. So that's the Japanese model. Then we got into the BMW model, way more complicated, but all the same things. It's basically just a computer. It too dies at the stoplight. And as an American, I notice when my air conditioner stops working as good, when it's 105 outside and we're traveling all around, talking to people. And in Texas, people were freaking out that the prices were skyrocketing everywhere, from the convenience store to the outlet stores to the things like Walmart, where they're getting their food, H-E-B and all of that stuff. But weirdly, people in Oklahoma were, really tripping out why everything was so cheap and they were waiting for the other shoe to drop. And let me tell you, it's about to drop. I mean, there's just continued conflict that is going to just push back delays on things being normal in the sense of product delivery, product manufacturing, shipping, logistics, all of that because of the Strait of Hormuz. And also, we have a lot of I would call them near conflicts or soon to be conflicts that are about to happen all over Europe. So they already have the integration of the track everything and trace everything that they introduced to us in the era from 2020 on. And now you have a robotic system that works with another robotic system that's saving your metadata. So now we are completely tracked and traced. Your car is going to link to your cellular phone, whether you give it permission or not. The cars itself has a cellular connection for itself, kind of like what you were talking about in the case of emergencies for the SOS, but also having a courtroom right there in the car with you, because now all the new models have various cameras looking at you, looking outside, looking at the keyholes. There's apps you can get on there and use it. So not only can you use your new robot car for surveillance, you can just go park it somewhere and then access through the app the cameras on there. But it's also a witness against you all of the time. So any of your innermost thoughts you might have been talking about with a friend or relative in the car on the phone, well, guess what? That's not a private conversation. Neither is your metadata, your contact list, your preference of music and other things. It's all being recorded. So we are in that age of a completely tracked and traced system. Really, the only thing holding us back from turning into a 1984 scenario is the fact that in the Western world here, there's a country that, had that piece of paper that said we had rights, and we're still clinging on to those rights. As for Europe, it seems like they've already given up that fight and are an occupied people, both by a corrupt government of their own, but also millions of people that don't share the same interest in the future that they do. So it is kind of a nightmare. But meanwhile, on TV.
Well, let me throw something on there then. Yeah, that whole European, there's no longer any privacy at all there. All apps, all social media needs to allow context, and then they're putting in there that they have the right to delete posts that they find offensive. And then Canada's coming out with a new agency up there that is going to determine, even though your social media posts are correct and factual, if it's out of context. And if it's out of context, you are going to get a fine. They're going to fine you. 100% everything correct, but if it's in the wrong context, and the government arbiters are going to be the ones who decide if it's out of context, and they're the same ones that can determine if your post needs to be removed and how much your fine will be, all under the same judges, literally. There's no external body that determines if it's going to be, or if it's out of context, if it's not. So this sets up Canada for its own set of things. You know how egregious they've been. Now Europe taking it to a whole new level there. I mean, completely new level. No privacy coins. Anything over like 3 cents, you need to file with fintech or whatever. You need to register. Anything so small, the amounts, like literally $5, you need to register. You spent $5 in cash and put it on your thing. And now they want to do unrealized gains on your asset taxes. Like if you didn't sell your house, they still want you to pay the tax on the price that went up, even though you didn't sell it. It's just kind of, they're way over the edge there. But Canada's not far behind, and we are slowly the tortoise in the race, coming back, following the same route. You know, we're following the same exact route, yet at a slower pace.
Right.
So kick back on there. The Mitch McConnell thing's interesting for me.
Well, it kind of links into this.
Off the beach. And is he alive or is he Memorexed here?
I don't know, because you got to wonder, like that, what you were talking about with Canada there. Are they going to sway that power against the outlets, the news media outlets also, about what is this out of context? If I say this resembles, Weekend at Bernie's or something like that. But it all goes to show that the whole thing's like a TV show, right? And you were kind of pointing that out earlier. Unfortunately, it seems like there's a bigger percentage of the population that is not voluntarily feeding into, you can call it Fed slop or propaganda or whatever you want. A lot of people were really looking forward to the 250th birthday of the United States and I celebrated in it. I try to get my kids to go get their fireworks on and watch the fireworks show and participate in it. But when you were looking at that bread and circus kind of thing that was going on in Washington, it kind of showed the idiocracy kind of movement pushing forward over here. So you got the communist route. Everybody kind of volunteered for it, I would say, in Europe and Canada and places like that. But here we're going to go the idiocracy route. And, you know, like I was saying, back to the prices, that people like in Oklahoma, where at least in Stillwater, Oklahoma, is where I was talking to people about prices. They were wondering why, you know, they didn't have a price hike there, and they kept reading on the news that everywhere was expensive, but they didn't feel it there, and they were really worried that it just hadn't caught up yet. You know what I mean? And I went around there looking at homes for sale and things like that just to compare them. And I can see that we are getting a housing market out, but there's going to be a lot of disappointed people that are trying to sell their properties at absorbent prices because the market's going down. Matter of fact, there's one town in Texas that whenever they changed the rules on the H-1B permissions, a lot of houses just opened up out of nowhere, weirdly, in a couple towns. And for the first time ever, local families had an opportunity to get in and buy houses that weren't available for the last 15 years.
Oh, how dare they allow that to happen? Oh, wait, we got an unrealized capital gain tax. You raise your property taxes to make sure if you get in that home that you're going to regret getting into it. You know, this whole thing about, I saw also an article I was looking at, let me see if I can pull it up here, where they were going, that was in Japan, that they were going to raise the tourist exit tax by 3x. So if you go to travel in Japan, you need to pay, like Thailand does it too. They charge you, like, I think, $20 or something.
Is this the regular Japan or the new Islamic Republic of Japan that's on the news?
The old traditional samurai Japan.
I'm sorry.
So it was so contradictory because, you know, being here in Taiwan, you see endless advertisements, come to Japan and go travel, come to Japan and go travel. Yet the reason they were going to raise these new taxes for tourists in Japan is because they're trying to stem the overflow of tourism into Japan by raising the exit tax higher to prevent this over-tourism, is what they call it. Yet at the same time, they're spending billions in advertising, getting people to come to Japan. So it seems like there's money out that's itemized and expensed, and then there's new money coming in that allows them to do something in fractionalized banking. In Japan also, we can look at some craziness going on up there. Let me share a screen with you, because what was the old is no longer going to be valid any longer. I can't even find it. Oh, the Times of Japan. Here we go. So, you know, reading through the news headlines here, let's just take a look how different it is and what we're looking at. So the big thing for me is this article right here on the right side, or on the left side, excuse me. Oh, I'm trying to close things. This one. You got to remember that this government used to give away money for 0%, zero. And that's how the world's financial system got to grow so fast, because they were getting all these trillions of dollars for 0%. So like an American bank would get it, and then they would throw it out to other banks, and they would like leverage it and do all these, you know, rehypothecation where it lends and it borrows and it lends and it borrows and it lends and it borrows. And then suddenly Japan needs all of its money back at 3%. It's like you got to pull those quadrillions, or not quadrillions, but tens of trillions of dollars that went out at 0% for 10 years. 10 years. They had 0%. So everybody and their mother's uncle that could get a banking license borrowed from Japan. This is how our stock market got so big. Everybody borrowed at zero. You could put, like, just even me, as I don't know anything, I could borrow from Japan at zero, buy U.S. government treasury bonds at that time at 4.5% on $1 billion, and I would earn that amount of interest, and I could just sit back and drink coffee and nothing, zero risk. So everybody was borrowing every penny Japan had for 10 years. And they were just making money out of nothing, creating. And then those people would buy the treasury bonds from Japan with their own money at zero, which allowed them to even produce and print more money. And it got into this vicious circle of just, it was a balloon. and we see it popping right now. So not only is the Japanese yen at 100, it was at 164 to a dollar. Like shit, when I would travel, there would be like 80. So their money has since lost 50% of its value at least. And then here's the nail in the coffin, and this is super important for the rest of the world. Japan rose its interest borrowing rate to 2.9%. And you might go, what's the deal, man? I don't get it. The deal is I borrowed it at 0% and threw it out 50 different leveraged trading ways to 50 other dudes with banks that put it out into the economy. Now all that needs to come back, or else we're paying 2.9% on money we didn't really have anyway because we got it at zero. It was free money. Now it costs money, and everybody's trying to get all this money back. And this is what's causing part of the collapse in a lot of things. People are fire sailing because they got to get the money back. Now the Bank of Japan understands that, oops, yeah, this is gonna rip the shreds of the entire global economy back, because we're calling all our money back in that went out for 10 years at zero. So this is creating an earthquake across everywhere now. And look for something to happen in Japan, magic. They're going to have some kind of natural disaster or whatever to pull money back in where they won't need that repayment. Just like after the big ass earthquake there, remember that? Their economy soared because so many people came back to help, but at the same time, they could print endless money because they needed Fukushima and also earthquake relief, and it just made perfect sense why they needed to print again, to like we did with COVID. A large natural disaster would allow them to do that once more. And here, and that was it. So that was the big thing that we're seeing over here right now. This is going to reverberate everywhere, because they just raised the price past what people can afford that got it for zero. Now everybody's like, we need to get rid of the money. It's too expensive. So then, where does that bring us suddenly back in the world, do you think?
I was thinking, how are they going to deal with this if really this is the trends to come here, where we have one of the global empires kind of saying, we're going to go to the gold standard. Our money's going to be linked to the gold. Your guys' money is inflated, and you guys print it and print it and print it. This is the best weapon I've seen the Communist Party of China use in a long time, actually, in my opinion. I was kind of surprised to see it, because I thought they would just hoard it and kind of inflate their money like everyone else. But they're just going right out there with it, where the yuan is now under one roof with gold.
Can you scroll down in the article a little bit and see if we can find some charts or graphs down in there?
Charts or graph? No, they got these two Hong Kong guys smiling with the FIC there.
Yeah, there we go. The Delivery Connect. This is, I can explain it too a little bit on my edge. I mean, I can add to your comments there, Ransom. China has set up physical storage locations, 2 in Africa, where they actually keep the gold there. So if you're an African trader or an African government, you don't have to take your money outside your own continent to go clear it and get the paper value or whatnot. China will swap you right there because they have the gold inside the countries. And they're setting up one city, unknown so far, in South America. They got Shanghai already set up. Hong Kong is its second bullion market. And I do believe it was the UAE was the other one, where they're keeping physical gold there. So basically making at least a portion of a gold-backed currency, because like, let's say you're a government of like Rwanda, and you get the Chinese renminbi because you sold them some minerals or whatnot. Before, in the old days, you would have to send the minerals, they would pay you, and they would swap you and bring like the Chinese yuan and credit it to your account. Well, now you can swap that for physical gold in your own country. Like, let's say Rwanda sold $10 million of minerals to China. They can actually say, you know what, we don't want the renminbi, we want gold. So then we're going to add that to our gold reserve for the country. And they can just swap it right in the country. They don't need to go even off of the continent. They just go, hey, China, we're going to swap gold for that, and we'll take it. And China's also setting up a ledger that allows companies to put in, and they're backed 1-to-1 on the gold if they don't want physical delivery, they allow them to run a ledger that says you're entitled to this much gold, redeemable and extractable at any second you decide to, because they're setting up physical bullion vaulted storage across all continents to allow them to trade gold for settlement instantly and physical, like literally physical, like we used to do in America pre-1933.
Right.
And this is what they're buying it. Since they've started this thing, they're clipping on about 15 tons a month to start adding into each of these different repositories. So they're going to be breaking our paper trade here, which means that, you know, the prices are really suppressed right now because, well, there's so much fake paper that it pushes the physical price down, because the paper contracts aren't even real. They never even settle. It's all cash. So if you get a trade on for like 1,000 ounces of gold, you're not going to take 1,000 ounces of gold in your hand. You're just going to say, okay, I'll take the cash. But that 1,000 ounce of gold on paper is competing with the real physical, and it'll push down the price if they say, we'll take it $50 lower at the close on whatever month that they decide to take delivery, or $100 lower or whatever. That's why prices have never risen. And last week I went into the U.S. Mint is putting their price for the gold coin commemorative 250-year bell at $19,500 for an ounce of gold. I understand there's minting costs and commemoratives cost more, but breaking down the math on what it costs for a commemorative silver coin previously, the price of silver was $70 and your commemorative cost $125. So doing the same working math on what it was for commemoratives versus bullion value, it came out to around $11,300 per ounce on the real gold price. If you're going to use those same metrics and move it through on what commemorative printing would be, you know, you get the box, you get the paper, you got the scan, the barcode. There's, you know, they got to run a server to hold all that data so you can confirm when you swipe your barcode or your QR code that indeed that little printed bell, minted bell, I should say, matches up with your card, the coin, all the numbers match up. Like there's a little extra, you know, cost in that. In addition to the way they double stamp it, they make it look pretty and everything. Stunning, actually. But the mint price approximately off the bullion price would be $11,300. So there's a lot of people talking about our government's just going to revalue gold one day to try to compete with this new. Otherwise, China's going to run away and be the determinant gold pricer of the planet. They've cleared out London. There's really nothing left in London. It's completely almost empty, unless what they get in every day, and then China is immediately pulling that back out. Not happening in America so much. We're exercising a little more control. But otherwise, like Abu Dhabi, the UAE, Shanghai, all the gold's folding in over to where the Chinese ownership is. We're the last island of gold not owned by Chinese or being completely hoovered in by the Chinese. And our paper markets are going to break because there's going to be multiple destinations around the world that are going to start valuing gold at a different price than we do. And then who's going to believe what's real? China's going to value it at 7,000 and we're still over here playing games at 4,000. All right, I'll take all your gold at 4,000. Awesome. I'm just going to move over there and get $3,000 an ounce. Please, I'll take everything you got. They're going to fly here in airplanes and go clean out the coin shops and whatever. Like
Right.
once that price goes over on the real physical, where they're willing to buy it for $1,000 more, $2,000, $3,000 more than we're willing to suppress the paper trade in America, at that point we lost pricing control, and that's the end of the game for what you know is the COMEX. And somebody's going to have to run with this and reprice our gold in Fort Knox. And Trump will probably happily, proudly do it. So, yeah, I revalue the gold. He'll get some kind of talking point out of it.
I think
So that's what's happening currently. And it is redeemable. And China has made this go live as of last week. So that article you're going back to there, Ransom, that one from Zero Hedge, that one kind of lays it out as to what their plans are. And you have to dig a little deeper. I watch a lot of gold and silver videos because I know some people personally in the space. And, you know, I've done some interviews with a few people in that like genre of metals.
You know, I was just thinking though, even if you're one of these African countries that are doing business, or even one of the poor Middle Eastern countries, and you have your choice to do, you know, business with the U.S. and getting paper or electronic funds that represent paper, versus Chinese actually paying in real gold that they can use in the Middle Eastern or African markets. I mean, it's kind of like hands down who they're going to want to do business with, and it's not us. And plus, we've already given them a bad taste in our mouth from, like repeated interventions into countries over the decades. So China is like their best friend. I mean, even though there's some stuff going on with them, they don't have the bad name yet. They're like we do. So every channel I watch on this free feed, they're showing different African shows, and what the number one thing you see kind of in the background, the show's not about. It's usually about wildlife or saving the jungle or the ecology, but there's always Chinese investors and businessmen doing all the business in the background and like owning the companies and stuff. So it's like a whole big market that they're exploiting. And not to mention that the Chinese don't mind having African wives. That's also a big thing, which, according to the new Supreme Court rules, somebody could come here from China, have their kid, move back to China, in 35 years, move back and run for president. Simple as that now.
Yeah, it's interesting how the Chinese have gone a different direction in terms of they're willing to pay for the things that they get. They're not starting wars over there to get it, or, the IMF is still there in the World Bank doing their nastiness, where they'll give a $1.2 billion loan to some, to choose your country over there. Okay, Central African Republic leader, and they'll pocket 1.99999 billion of that, and then leave like 50 cents for roads, and nobody cares, and nobody has cared. But the Chinese, when they give a loan, they actually make sure that the money is spent the way it is. So there are stipulations with the Chinese loans. When Chinese give you $1 billion of loan, they understand there's some corruption and graft. They get it. But there's an accountability standard. And I believe it was 50% at least had to be shown to go out and public works projects completed before you could get another loan. Like, it was an ongoing thing, because there was to be like one project that takes 7 years, and as long as it got developed, ED, and it was on track, and they could show that it was on track, there might be cost overruns, and that's where the corruption is. But the building was actually ongoing and provable, then the Chinese would issue you another loan. If there was no starting of construction, or if it went and they went to sites and it was totally dead and there was nobody there working, ongoing, purchasing anything, they would just like, no more loans for you. You stole all the money. By the way, we'll take over the project, because that was part of the stipulation. If you defaulted on that, thanks for half-built dam. We'll bring the Chinese engineers and finish it off, and we're going to charge you for the electricity, so get lost. So they understand there's a little bit different play here with Chinese money. And commodities too. I'm not trying to, be like China's, they're little golden school children and church pew, people. It's not like that. Their business, they go in, they don't do the killing and the nastiness and starting wars to overthrow dictators that are going to give us a better price. They're installing dictators on the US side. They're trying to work with everybody on the China side, because we have a different business model, and it worked for a while. But those days are long gone. We can't go in and overthrow nations and then install people that will give us rare earth minerals at 70% off market value, global pricing. Chinese are coming in, we'll help you develop it, we'll get a discount on your metals, but you get a constant buyer that'll give you nearly full price. And then we'll give you more loans so you can develop more things so we can make more money together. That's their style of like big ass loans. We're talking anywhere from $1 to $10 to $50 billion loans for projects. Like, they're stringing up all of Africa with the electricity. That big, huge, the Ethiopian highlands, they got the electrical corridor coming out of there. And that area in the East Rift Zone of Africa is going to be the wealthiest part of Africa, because now they got 6 hydro dams built by the Chinese, no less, in conjunction with them, that are now providing constant electricity, which they never had before. Now, this corridor is what South Sudan fighting of the war zone is about. That whole fighting you're seeing in Sudan is about the electrical corridor. Again, who's funding all this? Well, whoever has constant electricity suddenly has industry that never stops. So we want to go in and damage it, blow it up, and come in with our companies and reconstruct it. Well, China just skipped the damage part and went in and just started funding so we can build it without all the damage. And then, because after you kill somebody's families, they're not really that happy with your team, It's just a different style of doing business. I think our business model is a little bit antiquated, and we're going to have to adapt to it also. But we're still trying to hold on to the old ways. And somebody's got to start thinking for the future here for our world, because the old way we did it that's finished. It's definitely done.
We are definitely in crazy times here. A while back, before most of this stuff started in Iran, I was telling everybody that to not really worry about what was going on in the Middle East until you saw this a certain sign, and that would be Israel and Turkey having some kind of issues here. And this is not what this is about. I think the guy from Turkey maybe thought he could, get them going like you see in some of the third world countries where the parliament or the Congress or whatever they start slapping each other and throwing desks and mics at each other. This guy just gave everybody a revolver with 6 shots in it, I think, just to see what would happen. So he freaked out all the NATO people, the European guys, because he gave out a bunch of gifts here. But then I started,
those are really nice looking weapons too. I saw a couple of Telegram feeds where they opened up the box and looked down into it. Yeah, it looked real pretty. Like, look at the silver plating on that thing. Solid, man. Look at the handle as well. I mean, that's just
right. And he gave them 6 shots, just in case anybody wanted to jump off with their nationality, have an issue with somebody there. And this is completely against the whole NATO European model of supposed lifestyle, is that you can't have things like this, obviously. So it's funny that to me that he gave this gift out.
No, wait, what do you think about the value of that? Like, each one's individually engraved with the name on it, so there's only one on the planet of those. So in the future, the value of each one of those is going to be like a collector piece plus 10, like 30 years, 50 years now, when these people pass away and they're like, their political parties don't even exist anymore, and like, you get, imagine when this was engraved with John Wilkes Booth on it, and there's like only one on the planet. You know what I mean? Like, the collectors want that.
Speaking of that, how many of these European leaders are going to go ahead and take this gift home, despite in their home countries saying that you can't do that and you can't have that and that's bad and all that stuff? It seems to be okay for some people, but kind of the point I was getting is that Turkey manufacturing weapons is a big sign of our times. Because like I've told you guys before, it is one of the new biggest military industrial complex outputs of devices like drones and other things for a modern warfare scenario, especially in Europe. They've been selling Europeans lots of different things to protect them from the Russians, which, by the way, if you've been kind of following along the dialogue between that, Poland's worried Russia's going to invade them. Russia's saying, yeah, well, you keep helping Ukraine, so, you bet your ass. Putin's also saying, I'm getting real tired of you other countries aiding Ukraine. And you know what? That makes you subject to have a nuclear target on your back. And that's the way things are progressing. But I didn't think it would really get too serious until we saw Israel start poking at Turkey. And they're going to have some kind of skirmish, probably on the island of Cyprus, I imagine, would be the first skirmish. But you start seeing the rhetoric's already going on in Israel and Turkey, which, as you know, Turkey's a so-called NATO country. It also is a pro-Islamic country and friends with Russia at the same time. So it's very likely that they could flip it either way, but I would assume that they would be going in the style of the Ottoman Empire or the new Islamic Republic that Erdogan himself keeps talking about. It's a good idea. So with all the trouble going on in Iran and Russia and China basically saying they will, kind of back them. And it's funny that, Iran said, no, we're not making the bomb. We're not making the bomb. We're not making the bomb for 40 years. We're not making the bomb. And then we say, you're making the bomb. We start bombing. And now they say, you know what? We do want the bomb. That way we can't get invaded, because none of the countries with bombs get invaded, like North Korea, India, Pakistan. I could go on. Israel, probably, most likely. And they're now, cozying up to the idea to go ahead and let the public know that they do indeed have the Samson option, which is basically to start nuclear war. So are these guys crazy enough to go all the way to the point of mutually assured destruction? And is that the only way out of this? And is it all theatrical television production for the simple-minded person at home in their home country watching TV, worried about the world burning up? At the same time, I might add,
scroll down? Are there any maps in that article? Could you scroll down on that and see what we got for like graphics?
No, they don't. They didn't put. This is
okay. Middle East Eye. I've seen that. I know that publication pretty well. I've jumped through that probably dozens of times, fishing stories out of there about food, specifically food prices, inflation, Middle East inflation. crop losses across the Middle East and that sort of thing, export of foods. They do a good job on their business section in there in the Middle East Eye, by the way, for anybody that wants to do your own research.
Well, let's see here. This is basically what we're talking about as far as what they're making is these giant airplanes that just fly around until, you know, it decides that it has a target. And a lot of them, they're being put on autonomous mode. And the really sad part about this is that it's all like a television production. We all know where it's going. And in the background, they're just reshaping everything into 3 major government blocks. And, you know, we were just talking about China and their exploitation or, you know, doing business with, however you want to describe it, with Africa. That leaves the United States with South America and Central America as our only real, you know, backup of resources in this trilateral type arrangement for the New World Order. And it makes you wonder, which way are we going to have 3 different digital currencies that there's really no way to like get across the firewall of. So in other words, it seems like they're basically setting it up where you will not travel to the other blocks.
Well, that would be the stablecoin issuance. That comes in with EU on their with their censorship. Is the best. There's no other word to use. There's actually no soft word to use what the EU is doing right now. Control and censorship, and that's it. They can't control the narratives anymore because so many people are aware of what's going on. Now they just simply need to block what you can see, so you can't share what you can see. And you're going to have to do a digital entry even to be able to enable the internet. You're not even going to be able to get online unless you say who you are first, prove who you are first, and then what? Anything you say can and will be held against you? Of course it will. Okay, today's talking point is, let's go through history of, let's go back to say 2015 or 2016. Totally fine to make Polish jokes, right? But now, because Poland might get invaded, that might be an illegal term to make Polish jokes. Because the times have changed, but something you wrote in 2016 is still live on the net. Now you're arrested for something you posted 10 years ago or fined for wrong speak. Like there has to be an arbitrary level in terms of time because time keeps moving. You know, the old endless wokeness stuff that came creeping in from like 2014, 15, you were allowed to say stuff you weren't. Like my channel got hit because I wasn't on the global warming side of things. I was trying to show science actually. And, you know, that's fine. And I pivoted from that and that's great, you know, because that's what you got to do. But coming back now, it's fashionable and you're allowed to talk about it again because, well, the United Nations come out and said their numbers weren't correct. And you had these 10,000 scientists signing with the IPCC saying, you know, models were way too, you know, egregious on the warming. It was like, you know, 8 times too much warming that they had in their models. And it was just so overblown. Some of them were 85% too much, whatever. And there's all this like new information had come out from the scientific community saying that perhaps it's not as, so they locked everybody into a mind frame thought for about 7 years there. Now you're allowed to talk about things you weren't allowed to talk about before. So again, is that okay for 2 years? And then next, and you know, in 2032, you're going to be, hey, you talked about that back in 2026. How dare you? So as we move forward in time here, like these laws that are put on for what you can say, what you cannot say, should only have a shelf life of a certain amount of time because what we spoke about before, which was public discourse and allowable, not offensive, suddenly in another 2-3 years, depending on how the algorithm blows, is suddenly offensive. It's arrestable fines. You threaten somebody by making a joke, which was perfectly acceptable 3 years before. And now you're, you know, on the front line as a terror suspect. Right? Like the speech we use has to be blocked off in time. Like, okay, the speech used in this time, this block can't count anymore. We're in a new block. It's almost like, you know, blocks on cryptocurrency. You get a new block, one mining block. Well, that new block got mined. That's the way we should set off lexicon and speak as well. That was the end of the way that spoke for the month. That's still safe zone. So put it over there. It can never be cataloged and used against you because it was acceptable at this time. Like we almost need to start mining blocks of speech and setting them aside. Because then when new rules come in, there's a line, a very defined line of if you go over that at this point, you're over the line. But something you did 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, you can't use against me because it was acceptable at that time to speak like that. Like they're coming after all these people of things they said 20 years ago.
Right.
Dude, that's a block. That's a mind block. That's in the past. You can't really come back at people and really start to hit them on something they said decade ago, 3 decades ago. It's unacceptable to even think that way. But this is the way that the algorithms are moving and the governments are moving. And I want to, this EU thing is disturbing to see how even you as a traveler, you're going to have to get on the EU digital, ID system to access internet. And they're making all the VPNs give them back doors. Because if you have an internet or if you have a VPN that's not registered in the EU, they're going to block that. And they have ability to block VPNs, even though you don't think China's notorious for blocking VPNs. So they're using Chinese technology to block VPNs. And you like me and Ransom, we go over to Europe, we're going to have to get and put our little eyeball in the thing and get our fingerprints done just so we can get on the internet. It doesn't matter what nation you're from. You're in the EU now, bro. You need to get the digital ID to get online. And that's just ridiculous in itself.
Yeah, I was good. Along those lines, because it's not just over there. They're trying that here. People are going to jail. They're testing the waters to push that kind of mind rot over here. And I was going to point this out. Like, you got Amazon delisting people over books that they wrote, like you said, years ago. And, speaking of what you're talking about, that's exactly what they have done to the social media and the regular news media outlets. So what they've done is they literally have put them in these echo chambers, little blocks that they can buy and sell. You don't have access to over here. Even when you're on X, the freedom of reach, not freedom of speech, or freedom of speech, not freedom of reach, they put you in little echo chambers. So in a sense, they literally are blockchaining your ability to have resources and give people data that they don't want them to have. Just like this article right here, even the news outlets and everybody are worried about how they get portrayed in the search results. So publishers are trying to just opt out where they're not even part of the search results. You think the internet's dead now? What if the search engines can't even get access to the news media the little bit of news media that there is out there? And then you have to consider, all of the news media is mostly owned by the same people that are creating these tech blocks to block people out of information or block them in some cases if they don't like what you're saying. And we're just seeing that. And that one article was actually Mark Dice. They banned all of his books on the bookstore, citing it was an error later. But, considering they made videos for about 10 years about they're probably going to delete all his stuff off there any day, it kind of made sense when they finally did.
Mark Dice.
Yeah,
I know Mark, not personally, but I've seen a lot of he makes me laugh with a lot of his video commentary. And he sells a lot of merch too, and he makes some extra cash selling merch. So if they're going to remove his ability to, and he's got well over 1 million subscribers. I mean, and he does political commentary of the day. Well done in the way, shoves it in your face of how ridiculous it is. You're right, Ransom. This is a complete stage play, what we're seeing here. And the only next thing is, like the DTCC is going to go live tomorrow through the 12th is like kind of the ramping up stage to use Stellar on the test net for all financialized transactions on the planet. And initially starting through what's running in America on the stock market, the bond market, the equities, the ETFs, all these money markets and everything. That goes live tomorrow. And they're kind of slowly ramping it up through the 12th. And then it goes into the test phase. I keep coming back to this thing here. All these forecasters that I've seen, and there's some good quant guys out there that I follow. I'll suggest a couple here they actually write the programs that traders use to follow the quant. So they were all saying August and September, they're looking for a tremendous downturn after a spike and a peak here at the end of July. Now, this goes with what you're talking about. If there were to be some sort of bringing us to the edge of mutual assured destruction, the DTCC could test their new technology for instant settlements using Stellar on this digitized system that we're moving to, this tokenized world. They've never tested in a really hairy down situation. And that's one thing that they talked about is they've been testing it computer algorithmically modeling, but they've never tested it in real world conditions. So if they're saying, most people are saying August, September, look for a downtrend. And then as soon as we hit October, it's going up and up for the next 4 years on the regular. Like you're going to see, you thought prices went high now for all these stocks, bonds, nothing yet. We're in the beginning inning of it. But between then and now, it gives a huge opportunity to test the tech, break the tech if it can. But we need an event that takes it to a global financial meltdown-ish point, and then they bring it right back again after a month or two. Your mutually assured destruction thing of, I saw Iran hit a couple Navy, U.S. Navy destroyers, a bunch of people killed, one of them is partially sinking, and that's the edge of what is considered real battlefield. We stepping over a line into, well, now we're truly at war, possibly. What would crash a financial system enough that we could bring it back from the brink of destruction and death within a 2-month period? One of those, what you talked about, those scenarios, Ransom. I'd like you to walk me through it because I'm not, how do you envision that? Is there going to be a small scale nuclear weapon launched in a couple places? All markets go into free fall 20, 30%. DTCC gets to check its system on full financial contagion and how fast money can move around the world. Because last week when I did the video for the show here, I was showing the DTCC back dash panel live how they were transferring money when there was a financial crisis in Japan, and they were able to pull funds out of buckets from around the world to shore up like one economy. But what happens if it happens to every economy, and every economy needs that bucket of liquidity at the same time? This is what they haven't tested yet. What they've wired down is one zone on the planet, like South America, crashes and it's starting to take down the rest of the world. Well, they can pull from these liquidity and nobody gets margin called, and they can pay everything and nothing crashes past that point. But it's only one region of the world that they tested it. They've never tested all 5 regions of the world, 5 continents financially in a simultaneous crash condition. This would be the perfect time to do it before it goes live, because it absolutely goes live for the rest of the planet. So our money, in terms of not only the gold here, but the full tokenization, is all live on November of this year in just a few more months. So money, as you know, it has completely changed as of November. But they need to test a tremendous financial contagion condition in real life, which they haven't yet. They've modeled it. But modeling is different from the real world, which they found in 2008. So with this, yeah, please hit us up over there, civilizationcycle.com. Put out the show notes last week. Hope you got those. Just 10 bullet points, a couple graphs, some thoughts for myself and Rancho about, how did the week turn out? What are you seeing really there? And that's the newsletter. Hit us up there. Just drop your email in. Continuing to grow on the newsletter. So thank you for your support on that. Again, we don't do anything with the info. It's just so we can give you information and, put it in a concise, easy to read format. Comes out as a PDF and you can just read it. Also, buymeacoffee.com/civilization. If you like this type of content, please support us. We got running costs for our software and what we're broadcasting on tonight. And we're going to take a quick break here. We're right back at the top of the hour, part 2 of the Civilization Cycle. And what is it? It is July 9th today, and it's going to be a wonderful month of July. Expect fireworks for the rest of the month here. So we'll be back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds. Please join us then. Hey everyone, are you ready to grow your own fresh, delicious vegetables, herbs, and flowers this season? If you're looking for the highest quality heirloom and organic seeds, I've got the perfect company for you, True Leaf Market. They've been a trusted seed company since 1974, offering 3,000 types of non-GMO varieties, everything from classic heirloom tomatoes and peppers to rare herbs, microgreens, sprouting seeds, and beautiful flowers. All those seeds are open pollinated, pure, and perfect for home gardeners or anyone wanting healthy, flavorful produce without chemicals. What I love the most is their huge selection, fast shipping guarantees, plus options for bulk if you're going big. If you're excited to start your garden this year with real, authentic heirloom and organic seeds, click the link in the description box below to check out TrueLeafMarket.com. You won't regret it. Happy planting, and thank you for supporting the channel and this broadcast. Product you love, the 72-hour emergency food kit from My Patriot Supply. Not only emergency food, but camping food, and you can prepare that through the week as well. 20 delicious just add water meals. Think about creamy mac and cheese, hearty chili, sweet oatmeal. 2,000 calories a day. You need the calories. You're going to need to think and move. And the mashed potatoes, easier to make than oats, and you can add your own flavors. Goes with anything. For less than a couple of takeout meals at a fast food restaurant, get real peace of mind. And a real question to ask, how long could your family eat without leaving home? My Patriot Supply, click on that link in the description box below. It helps the channel. Truth is hard to say and hard to hear. Most people choose silence. We choose to speak. Your support of our sponsor keeps the Civilization Cycle podcast on air and giving us the courage to keep digging. That link's in the description box below. This is not a toothpaste. It's a revolution for your teeth. Remineralize, strengthen teeth, all natural ingredients, essential oils, minerals, salts. Alpha Vedic Dental Solutions System. That's alphavedic.com/civilization. You know, we're always trying to bring you the best products here that we think will enhance your life, especially if supply chains break down further, or if there's some disruption in our lives here. It seems in the news more and more possible, but hey, who knows? Maybe it's a mind game. But what is not is keeping your dental health up. And not a lot of people are talking about this. We always see the storable foods. But what about dental care during these same emergency situations? Will your toothpaste eventually run out? Well, if it does, then what? So like I say, this whole micro gut biome is driven by your oral cavity first. So take a look at what they have, alphavedic.com/civilization. Every purchase you make helps keep our live radio show and podcast on air, bringing you more information just like this. alphavedic.com/civilization. That link is in the show notes below. And as always, I appreciate your valuable time and joining us in this ever and most important conversation as we move forward in our world.
Please remember to sign up for our show notes. With Civilization Cycle podcast, you can learn what to expect as society resets. Agriculture, economy, tech, and history all have mappable cycles, and these cycles affect every aspect of our lives. We can navigate the chaos and thrive together with up-to-date news and information. Also, if you like the content we have here on Civilization Cycle, think about fueling the discussions and the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Civilization Cycle. And thank you for all the support.
Welcome back for the second hour right here, the Civilization Cycle podcast. David Dubine and Ransom Godwin bringing you in. It is the 7th of July, or no, it's not reading the date backward. It is the 9th of July, and the world continues to spin. So Ransom was showing or just about to explain something to me before we went on break, because I'm trying to connect 2 points together here. Financial system and what you're talking about bringing us to the brink of mutual assured destruction to try to reset markets for a little bit. Everybody's talking about they're way too high, way too overpriced, all this. Plus they get to test the technology of a crashing market across all markets at the exact same time. That never happened except, maybe a couple rare instances like 2008 would probably be the best. 2008 and 9, where we got into those crashes, everything was so intertwined, but now even more so. So we're moving to a new tokenized system. They call it tokenized rails, where everything of value is going to be tokenized and wrapped into a smart contract. Every financial instrument from this point forward in November on the planet is no longer going to operate the way you used to remember it operating. We're in a completely different way of working with money and how value and money is going to move across the planet. And we in America got shafted on the new Clarity Act bill. We get 0% interest on any tokens that come out. So stable coins, which is going to be part of this, that's going to be help move like money around the world instantly. So there's no stock market crashes anymore. So if somebody gets like a $3 billion margin call and they're going to lose 3 billion plus percentages, they can move 3 billion from an American market to Japan in like 2 minutes to prevent that crash that then would have cascaded 20 other companies at 3 to 5, $10 billion margin calls. Like the cascades that we've seen in different financial crises, that'll be a thing of the past. Truly, it'll never happen again, at least for the next 10 to 20 years. So if you can just hold on until November, this new system rolls in. The reason I was trying to connect that, but Ransom, I was asking you just before I went to the break, like you see bringing us to the edge of mutual assured destruction here. Like, can you explain that to me? Like, do you mean like drop a small nuke somewhere, or like a battlefield kind in a couple places, scare everybody, nuclear weapon got dropped, and then that's going to be the thing that's the catalyst, or how does that work for you? Can you
Well,
flesh that out for me? I guess is the best thing I can say.
here we'll just start here with the Iran war takes terrifying turn as missiles bombard nuclear plant and flights are thrown into chaos. This is real similar to, what we were talking about the Ukraine. Let me get rid of this widget. I don't know where it came from. There we go. Yeah, so look at the language that they're using even out of the Times of Israel. Prolonged Iran escalation. And they say there's no current push for Israeli involvement, but that's not what that's not what they're saying on the other end. And then you got, headlines like this, and they're all over the place. It's the same type of language, prolonged conflict, years of conflict. We first started out, it was going to be just a quick in and out, and then maybe it's going to be 2 weeks. And now we're, till September, maybe 2027. Now, what are we looking at? Another decade to flatten the curve here? Who knows? It looks like these are breaking out. And like I said, we may see a conflict between Israel and Turkey, which would be an ugly thing that would shut down the whole Mediterranean. In any shipping that would be coming through the north side of the Mediterranean. And then, of course, if the Ukraine-Russia thing splits into the waterways there, you also got that. And we've talked about many times how the trade routes end basically in that area all the way from China. So it's back and forth. So the entire thing, that would be the whole setup for everything. But the language that they're using, and then we have this, just in time intelligence saying there's an Iran plot to assassinate Trump again. He had to, not use that Qatari plane. So he had to jump on the old Air Force One to come home because I don't know what. They said there may have been a security problem, but you could just go through them all. This is what everyone's talking about. No one's pushing back on the idea that, there might have been something going on that led to them to use the old Air Force. And I've been on the old Air Force 2, and it's really antiquated, old, hard wired technology compared to, maybe something with a lot of digital stuff and Wi-Fi and more modern technology. So there was a reason probably that they did that. But I think one of the main reasons is so that everybody knows that there's some real deal stuff going on as we continue to bomb Iran. And then, that's a big message to the world right now, that we're going to have prolonged conflict. And then you have over here, what they're talking about is basically this is going to be the type of conflict where we're just sending up robots, just like those ones you're driving down the highway now, except for it flies around until it eventually is needed to blow up something. And what is really going to run this stuff, and this is, something that flies from home. This is something that you send from a long ways away or off a ship, a long ways away from the target. You don't need a runway. All you got is a guy in a goggles basically monitoring it. It does its own thing now. It's not even like it used to be where there was a guy flying it around and doing stuff. Now there's just a guy monitoring it. And there's an AI monitoring that. So he just gets notified if there's a malfunction or an error. So they're just pumping this stuff up in the sky. And you got Russia warning NATO to stop and think before leading the world catastrophic confrontation. But this is what it's really about over here. China, Russia, and others seek to inflame debate over AI data centers. State actors in China, Russia, and Iran have sought to exploit U.S. public debate over the effects of the technology. That's because, well, they don't want us to build them because, those little things flying around ready to drop down on a city and blow something up. Well, they need a place for processing to run all of that data. And they're not just building giant data centers that you can see from space. They're building them in small houses now all over the place. They're even trying to roll in the Native Americans' land area and sell them on the idea, which, judging from the past and the introduction to casinos on their land, I would think some tribes will go ahead and go for that. Why not? It's free money to them. I mean, from their perspective.
Yeah, no, well, there was an eye-opening experience here as we went with power outages across parts of the United States last week with the heat dome because there was so much electricity redirected into the data centers. Like
You
we had
know,
eight states and like 8 million people that were without power because of blackouts in that heat because the data centers were drawing so much power that our own homes couldn't stay cool. So if you looked at the power outage map, it was a Power Out USA map. You know, you could take a look. I got some screen grabs, but I don't have them on this computer. But if you go back, there were like 8 red states and probably 6 or 8 yellow states where they were right at the edge of blacking out or browning out. A friend of mine, Kevin, shout out back in Tennessee, sent me some statistics about the TVA. And we were precariously close across Tennessee to not having enough power either because we'd sent so much power out to others that were at maximum demand. And Tennessee was to the choice where they're going to have to flip a coin. Let other states black out and those data centers black out, or we black out in Tennessee. We were that close. And, you know, we're always that extra swing producer because there's a lot of nuclear there, got a lot of hydro. And I don't know, it just, something went terribly wrong. And I think the public woke up last week.
well,
A heat dome causes catastrophic power outages across many states. And it would never happen like that before. The only time we ever got into that real power outage thing, this is what concerns me, is winters are going to get more brutally cold and longer. Like we saw these last 2 winters just have incredible events of just tremendous record cold that pulled all-time record draw on the grid. What happens this year? We got, you know, an extra probably 10% of data centers will be functional and pulling power at the same time that will need that power for record cold. So what's that going to do for us? You know, blacking out in heat is bad enough. You can go somewhere though. You can like jump in a swimming pool. You can get outside, try to get in a forest, get under some shade, go somewhere where it's cool, look for where there's blowing down a mountain stream and get in that shady area or whatever. Cooling centers, you can get somewhere. But when your heat goes out and it's 30 degrees Fahrenheit below zero or 20 or 0 degrees in like Tennessee, for example, there's just nowhere to run from that. You can put on a whole bunch of extra clothes, and unless you know how to get your room warm and keep it warm and get a tent in there and like layer that thing into your living space, you're going to freeze. And freezing is way worse and way more terrible than it is on the heat side. Your body will regulate itself on the heat side. You might stop moving for a minute and just be like, I can't move, I'm too hot, I can't breathe. But if you just stay still, your body will do that self-regulation thing for you. And I'm sure you could attest to that way more than me, being out in the hot zone. But when your body gets cold and you can't control the cold, you're doomed, really. Your cold is way worse than hot. And if we're going to black out 8 million homes when you're at record cold, that's not going to fly. Somebody's putting this together. The data centers are causing our power grid not to be able to provide enough at extreme conditions of climate, either heat or cold, for us in our homes any longer. Like there was a wake-up call came last week, and I was reading a really interesting article that says if this heat dome hadn't appeared last week, that the build out of the data centers would have run another 3, 5, 7 years before we would have come to this conclusion. But since the heat dome pushed the maximum amount of usable power where everybody drew it to keep their homes cooler, that it let the cat out of the bag literally half a decade earlier than they anticipated the cat coming out of the bag. So you can thank Mother Nature for alerting us to the danger of the data centers.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one thing I did notice while I was staying in Houston, all over town at nighttime, the lights were flickering. Every time, as a matter of fact, in one of the to-do neighborhoods I happen to be in, every time one of the big houses, mansions really, had their air conditioner came on, the entire block would flicker. So they were already at the limits there, I could tell. And I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to bring it up, that was something I was really tripping on while I was in Texas, is it was so hot and muggy that I couldn't stand it outside. I'm, you know, I like the dry heat where I can, like you said, I can go stand in the shade for a minute, not move around, I cool off, regulate. It's hard to do that in places like humid Houston, where there's no escape. You can't get under the tree everywhere you go. Even if you went down to the water, it actually makes it a little worse because you're dripping water. So I would kind of disagree with you on certain aspects of that. Because, you know, the truth is that most people are not in the health to withstand dramatic temperatures like heat. So they'll die. They'll die if they don't really drink water and they don't take it serious and they don't restrict their movements and try to get some air flowing and all that stuff. They will absolutely die when the power goes out when it's hot. However, like you said, that's for that same reason of people having trouble regulating their body temperature due to health problems, whether they're on medications, they're diabetic, they're just completely out of shape where their heart, pumps whenever they do stuff. They're susceptible to getting hypothermia very easily. So, like you were saying, if the power goes out anywhere because of these, and I did notice firsthand the power fluctuation in a major metropolis area, and I'm just looking around and it was just scary, really, thinking about most of these people are getting nightly Grubhub and Uber Eats. They don't have no food. The air conditioner turns off. You're looking at tons of I would say, and a lot of them are introverted people that don't really, go outside because they have a nice life. They get shit delivered to them. They're not really, fighting everybody down at the local HEB. They just get it delivered. Those type of people all of a sudden will have to leave their house, not ever dealing with the real temperatures. And then you got the poor folks that are just sitting out there, sweating all day. They're used to it already. I mean, they've been doing it for years. And to bring this kind of to a point that might make you laugh.
Let me drop this article in here because it's going to continue. The heat's going to continue through the summer. So we're probably going to get one more bout of this data center awareness as we come through, I would say late August, early September. We're going to get a tremendous boost of heat, just like it is every El Nino. If you look back at the temperature records from Dr. Roy Spencer on when the spikes were at the Super Ninos, we're going to get another heat spike up at the end of summer here. This is going to cause the, we're probably going to, I would say one more extreme heat dome is going to form at the end of the summer here based on this. So remember in the beginning of the year, all eyes were on like, hey, this is going to be the most extreme Nino since 1877. But in reality, when it turns out, it's going to be right around 3 Celsius above baseline, which puts it into, 75 to 80 year index event here. So we got to go back to, the previous one was equally as strong. So that's what's interesting. One that was equally as strong was 2004. So when you look at that and you go, all right, well, 2004 on the negative side there, 2000, and then you miss the mark and you got to go far back. You get 2010 heat spike. And that's the whole thing about the global temperatures. If you go to drroyspencer.com, you can find the monthly heat charts, or at least here, I'll pull one up for you. Let's share this one. And you can see the temperatures continually to go up, but not as egregiously as they would say. And again, a lot of this is based on reverse, where the CO2 goes up first, then temperature is, so it's not the CO2 driving the temperature. Temperature causes more release of CO2 based there where it's locked up in Arctic where then you get about 300-year lag on that. So most of the new data coming out saying there's about 300-year lag, and we got it wrong. It's not CO2 driving the temperature. It's the opposite. The temperature then drives and allows release of CO2. So you can kind of correlate these on a real near-in basis, but if you're looking back multi-thousands of years or, 10, 20,000 years, you start to see that 300-year lag behind what temperature spikes up, sun-driven, obviously, on that. And then the CO2 will follow. Obviously, if you're going to melt more in the methane release, more CO2 release in the Arctic permafrost getting released because of warmer temperatures. So this is the lag. And if we go back, like I say, 2010, we got that spike right there. 2017, we got another one, and then we got the 2020. And we're gonna start screaming more north up here. So I would imagine next year sometime we're going to be at this equal level or maybe a little higher. And then it'll descend back down again, probably toward baseline, because that's what happens after extreme El Ninos. You see every time it comes back below baseline after that. You get the extreme heating, and then the planet regulates, and then it brings us back toward baseline. We start over again. We're back up. So the drop off of this over the next, say, 5 to 10 years, we're going to get the heat spike, and then we're going to drop way back down to zero again. And I'm wondering how this will then do with that long-term average. Because the higher that goes, when you reduce it back further, that line's going to tilt back more toward equilibrium versus where it is now. because that line's at the point before we revert to heat and then go back balance on cold. So, that line's always going to be moving. It's never static like that. So it's going to be tilt degree angle is going to spin a little bit depending on where we go up or down. So these are directly correlated. So I don't know. I'll leave it with you that, but expect another heat burst to come in here. Yeah, what do you got here on?
Well, I was watching social medias. There's this guy, what is his name? Osmondo or something like that.
I know Osmondo. I mean, I've seen him stuff. I don't know.
The eyebrow guy. He's got the cool eyebrows.
That's the guy.
Anyway, he was doing a live stream, and he was basically, had a bunch of European people in his chat, and he was busting their balls about this. 62,700 Europeans died of heat causes in a single summer. And then you get down here to our gun deaths, and these are including homicides and suicides. It doesn't include whenever, someone stopped a crime with a gun or any of that, which people estimate is in the multi-millions each year in the USA, that crimes are stopped by guns. But let's just forget that. And if you took out the suicides, this would drop down considerably. And even with the suicides, it's still nowhere close to the amount of people dying because they're not allowed to have air conditioners. And, he was kind of busting their balls, and they were saying, well, in America, you might die from a gun. He's like, more people are dying because you won't plug in an air conditioner in Europe. And then, even worse than that, their heating situation in Europe. I mean, 170,000, 360,000, and people are, crying about different political things, calling different wars and atrocities genocides, and maybe they are, and you could argue that. But what about the people dying of the cold in the middle of global warming each year? I mean, 300 and something, I forgot the number already, 360,000 people estimated to die in Europe. What's it say?
Is that from heat and cold both, or is that just cold?
No, that is just the cold one. If you added the heat to it, it'd be like 400 something thousand. That means 400 something thousand people are dying because your stupid green ideas. I mean, the idea that you shouldn't, have a fire. And that's funny because, that power outage that you were talking about where people don't have the heat, obviously the only thing left is for them to try to burn things to become warm, and they've banned those kind of things almost everywhere. When I was in England, all the fireplaces were bricked up. It made no sense, right? And then they got those little dinky hot water on demand things saving the planet. Okay, great. I got a giant hot water heater with hot water on demand. I made sure to pay the air conditioner people so I wouldn't have to die in my tin can in the desert. So the fact that these people are letting, 500,000 people die each year just because their communism won't allow them to turn on the heat or the cold, that's worse than any war going on right now.
Well, at least it's equality across
war on people.
Yeah, it hits everybody equally across. I don't care what nationality you're from, what sex, race, religion. Everybody gets an equal chance of dying from heat or cold in Europe. It's the great equalizer, I should say. Again, you're looking for equity and diversity and equality and inclusion. That's it. Turn off the heat and the air and then see who gets included in those numbers. It's the great equalizer. You gotta love it in Europe. Hey, pass me the red wine, dude.
And just to throw this on your heat wave.
Explosive diarrhea. I saw that. I knew you were going to bring it up. The explosive diarrhea.
It's funny, but it's not funny. I mean, I've had the Nova virus recently, which was projectile vomiting and that. But now they're talking projectile explosive diarrhea in the middle of a heat wave. Now, that's what you want to talk about, an apocalyptic situation. You get one of these southern cities like Atlanta or Miami or something, and the power goes out, or Houston or Dallas, Fort Worth. Power goes out. Everybody's got the poops, dysentery all around, and, when we joke about you don't want to be in the city when the power goes out, that would be one of those prime examples. No food, no electricity, no heat or cold, depending on the season, and explosive diarrhea all around. Plus, if you go try to hide in the woods to take your poop, you might just get that alpha gal syndrome and not be able to eat meat no more. I mean, it is apocalyptic times. That's all I got for the fear report this week, though. Explosive diarrhea. I would also
add one more variable into that one. Explosive diarrhea on a slick marble surface. Like a shopping mall or some kind of nice bank, and you get that in there, you're sliding on the floor. Just had to add it in for a little context because that's the last variable.
The EBT done went out at Walmart. The power's out, and people are slipping all around on some kind of
Oh, you're building
substance.
me up, man. Building it up here. Sheesh. Hey, let me
All
jump over.
seriousness.
Speaking of that, let me hit up on another one here. This again just shows you the direction we're taking the whole global finance system. So, in addition to what's going on in America, not we, but the financial system across the world is now going to allow the entire global population to trade. Come on, why can't I get that moving over there? To trade onto Indian bonds on their markets. So this is one thing that was unexpected and nobody saw coming. So this system's going live this November. So anywhere in India, they can pull money that they might need called liquidity. It just means more money available or less money available. So when they say there's less liquidity, it just means less money available. More liquidity, more money available. That's really the way you put it in proper English there. So if they need more money or more liquidity in a different location on the planet, see, now they're not just drawing from Japan and Australia and the EU and America and these types of central bank places. Now, look, India is included in the mix too. So what they're trying to do is build this global unified system here where anybody can trade anybody's assets across the planet and everything will be tokenized. So everything that exists in India, including the Taj Mahal, will have a price put on it, and the price of the Taj Mahal will be wrapped in a smart contract, and that will have a value of how many billions would you pay for the Taj Mahal? Well, that'll have a smart contract associated with, because the physical thing's there. But the problem with our real world now is physical things like houses and buildings and stuff, they're just not liquid at all. You can't really move it and go trade it and pay off somebody with it. But if you financialize it and turn it into a contract, we know the physical building's there, it's worth this much. We're going to take the value out of it, and it's an entire contract that equals the value of that building. You could swap it, trade it around, somebody can borrow it, they can give you interest back on it, but the underlying financial wrapped in that can't be parsed off or sold and liquidated because the physical building's still there and it didn't transfer ownership. The value of that, this is the craziest thing. The value in any building can be wrapped into a contract, and that's worth, let's say, $1 billion US for the Taj Mahal. Now that can float around the world and be added to a pool of liquidity and adds more. You just added $1 billion into this available amount of money. It turns into that available money for a minute, and then when it comes back out, it turns back into that contract again, and it can't go below the value of it. And then it's back to that tagged 1-to-1 for the building. And you have to pay interest when you use it, and the interest is paid in stable coins. So moving forward, everything on the planet is going to have a value to it. And you can see that even India, this was the nail in the coffin for me. Like once India got in there, and you saw India getting in on the trade where they're pulling in all that financial markets of India now in on this global news system. It's live at the end of the year here. So they already announced that it's live in India. So where else? New Zealand markets live also. Australian markets are live. Everywhere is live. China is its own thing, but it's live in itself, but it's on its own like branch network over there. The BRICS are their own branch network of the same network. They just have different style of the way they're doing it with their liquidity pools. So again, what you referenced there, 3 different regions of the planet operating, and maybe there's firewall between, but they're all using the same tokenized system. That's the thing. Whether the tokenized system swap between China and America doesn't matter. If they're their own island of liquidity in amongst other countries, like you say, the 3 regions of the planet, if that can all operate and keep that area economically floating, and somehow there's going to have to be a bridge coin. A liquidity bridge is what they call it. There's a real name for this. And they've already tried to figure out how to get money from one island of capital that's not connected to like ours. So 2 operating systems like BRIC nations, tokenized system into Western financial tokenized systems. There's nothing that really connects it because they're like oil and water. They're not mixing. They're separated at the moment. So they're thinking about stellar lumens is what they call it, a bridge token to get between those 2. Unknown as of now, but you're pretty much right on, Ransom, with that 3 different regions of the world thing. So India's in on it. So you know, like they've pretty much got this thing live now across the planet. They're just in their test phase. So we'll see how that works moving forward. Get ready for a big shakeup because you're not going to own anything anymore. The banks are going to own your stuff. They're going to swoop it into this tokenized system. And nobody knows really how it's going to work at that point. Like, how do you claim your property back to be able to sell it if the bank has it in a wrapped token, like your house, random $500,000 token on your house, and then it's out in the liquidity pool. And then one day you say, I want to sell my house today. And they're like, no, it's wrapped up in liquidity over in the Japanese market to stop their financial collapse. How do you exit your house and get the value and actually sell it? That's the question. Nobody knows. Or are they just going to say, all right, your house is worth this much, and if it goes up or down in value, we'll just add more tokens to your thing, to your balance? Because JP Morgan said that they will not, they've already issued their first like bucket of tokenized deposits, meaning like if we had an account at JP Morgan right now, they have swooped all of our American dollars into this tokenized money fund. In the old system, you got a 0.1% on your deposit in a bank. Well, in the new system, they swooped all that money and it's 0.0. There's zero of interest on your money now. Not for Americans, at least, zero. Other places, you're getting 4.5%. See, that's what terrified the banks, is this new world system of like USD Tether or USD Circle, or there's all these different stable coins coming out. In the rest of the world, you're getting 4.5% for just holding that dollar equivalent. So the American banks are like, no, Americans are only getting 0.1%. If they find this out, they're going to take all their money and put it in stable coins that are getting 4.5%. So nobody will want to keep money in our banks anymore. This is the reason that they're so hostile toward any kind of interest-bearing tokens in our system. So anyway, that's it, man. Get ready. There's going to be a huge shake. You're going to get notices from your financial institutions that you don't own it, and they're going to try to explain how they tokenize your house and put it in a liquidity fund, and how you're going to have to interact in this new system. And it's just going to be a nightmare for a lot of people that don't understand basic like blockchain technology. But try to wrap it up into something this complex of, hey, I thought I owned my house. You don't.
No, you don't know nothing. And then, just the idea that we're sitting around having up to the locals to decide how much tax you're supposed to pay out on whatever property you have in the first place. And then the tokenization of everything. And like I was talking about earlier, they even have the social medias and the news medias kind of in this blockchain system. Maybe not like a tokenized thing, but they have everything walled off in echo chambers to where they are little blocks that they can trade or open up or sell to someone else. And it seems like, all of these things are going to be subscription models, which we've talked about heavily in the past, that everything in the future will be on the subscription model, whether it's AI, whether it's your car, maybe even your house, a subscription model where you keep paying. And then right here, AI price war breaks out. Meta unveils paid AI model for the first time, will be amongst the most affordable options. Well, if Meta or Facebook is, offering a low thing, then what's going to happen is these two separations of information gathering, those that can afford to actually see what's on the internet and the information and the networks and get access to them by being able to use this tokenized money. Or you won't even be able to get into, areas of information. You'll have to deal with like the basic Google that's, I was talking about before. The information on the internet is evaporating. So even the search engines won't be able to give you what you're looking for. They're only going to be able to give you products that they're selling or things that they want you to buy or opinions that they want you to have. You'll have a nonstop free feed of that. And to even access the rest of the internet, you're just, you're not going to get there. And then this blows my mind right here. This New Hampshire kills historic $100 million Bitcoin bond proposal, which would have made them, what was it, the first municipal bond in the world secured by Bitcoin. And they turned that down. And I'm wondering why. Are they going to go with like one of these government-backed things instead? They'll allow that, but not Bitcoin?
I have kind of an answer for you here. Now, all eyes have focused you over to Bitcoin, right? So every time you see crypto news, it's always BTC on the front or Ethereum, So they got, as I saw today, 7% of all the Bitcoin in the entire planet is owned by companies now. Now, luckily for us, there's a tremendous amount of like individual holders that are there that will never outdo that. As long as individual people still continue to hold their Bitcoin, companies will never have more than 50% to change the code in that. But as I was listening to the Standard Charter blockchain protocol, lead head over there, and by the way, just for a quick FYI for anybody out here looking for like institutional information, Standard Charter has the most accurate and best forecast for crypto pricing over the last 8 years than any other bank, hands down. Like you get like JP Morgan and Bank of America and Chase and Wells Fargo and all that shit. They're just talking out their asses trying to get their company or institutional customers to jump in because they're selling them such a wow package, The Standard Charter, just if you go out there and look at their number, you could just like whittle your search down. Believe me, I have been searching for forever for this. So all the hundreds of hours of research looking just for the banks that got the correct call over the last 8 years. Standard Charter's it. So they are saying that with the tokenized rails coming in, Uniswap, Aave, and Morpho are going to be the ones that are going to be chosen by all financial institutions to run their tokenized rails. And how they get the tokenized product, whether it be your house or your car, into that wrapped smart contract as a package. And it's going to require a couple stellar lumens to wrap the contract, 15 actually. So they create a contract that's an empty vessel, but you got to lock 15 stellar lumens in on that to create the empty vessel. Once you have the empty vessel, you can add a liquidity in it, like your house. They'll tokenize it on another vehicle. Will take that on the blockchain, the value of your house, and wrap that in and say David's house and land is worth this much. That'll go into the empty vessel, and now wham, it locks together as a smart contract, and there's this much value in it. Now they can choose to, if they want to, I saw the banks are doing, they can parse this out into $25,000 packets, $100,000 packets. It's just going to be, like we have nickels, dimes, quarters, dollars, $10 bills, $5 bills. It's going to be exactly the same, but in a tokenized version. And it's going to be from the banks holding assets on their books of loans they've given out that they still hold title to. And I'll say it again, the Standard Charter head of blockchain technology is very, very clear. Uniswap, Aave, and Morpho. Now, what if the New York people decided not to go Bitcoin because they're thinking, all right, Bitcoin, that's only going to go up probably 3 or 4 times in the next, say, 4 years. But Uniswap, they were calling a 10 to 20x increase in prices. So if you were smart on the school board, and maybe there's some goings on behind where people understand, maybe they're going to go in on a Uniswap play instead of a Bitcoin play, because Uniswap is what all the banks are going to use to tokenize. So which one would you do? And okay, you're looking at it, and I look at it and say that's just ridiculous that you would not use a tokenized Bitcoin fund to roll your thing, because you know it's going to go up at least 3x. And it's liquidity on demand where you can pull from that and get loans against that. So if the school board needs something, let's say they got the 100, how much was ransom? How much was the total value of that they pulled back from? 100 million?
Yes.
Because think about that. Let's say you put 100 million in, and then Bitcoin rockets up to say 250 or 260, and it's at 6 now, 60,000, and it goes up to let's say 240,000 or 24, and then that's a 4 times gain. You're like, wow, it's up to $250,000 for a Bitcoin. You got $100 million. Aave or Uniswap's like $3.50 now, and he said, let's put that 100 million in Uniswap, and we can get a 10 to 20x out of that, according to Standard Charter. And again, at the same time, you could lock that up. You could stake that and get interest off of that 100 million. I don't know what the Uniswap, interest payments are if you're going to lock tokens up there. That's a revenue generating model. But then at the same time, if it came up too, and then let's say in the same amount of time, it was a 20x or a 15x on that 100 million, then that would be a much better play if you're looking long term. And if those people were smart enough to understand where the big money is going to use. Where's the big money? Which engine is it going to use to run its machine? Is it going to use diesel? Is it going to use E85? Is it going to use pure ethanol? Is it going to use, hemp oil? Or is it going to use soybean oil? Like, you got to figure out what is going to be used in the engine to make the engine move. And this is pretty much it. You're thinking about the fuel of the engine here. So break it down into real simple things. All right, we got an engine and your car's moving and you want your car to move and your car is going to start moving. Okay, well, it's the same thing. We're building a whole new system. It's like Henry Ford building a whole new automobile again, completely from scratch, from zero. So how do you start from, what's the first frame part that you're going to put in? Okay, that's a blockchain. All right, then what are you going to do for the chassis on it? Okay, we're going to use, I don't know, ETH in the beginning, and then we'll see what other kind of chains we can tokenize things on. Okay, where are you going to lock it from? And then build each part out until you have a full working engine. And then you just need to see what is going to be the fuel that's going to be used in it. Like, how are they going to generate income? Because these companies, you got to think how a company thinks. They don't want to just buy something and hold on to it and wait and hopefully it goes up. They don't think like that. They think we're going to buy something. It is going to generate revenue. It's going to generate revenue while we hold it, while we wait for it to go up. There's no buy and hold like this magic glass and hope it goes up double in value and we'll sell it in 5 years. That glass needs to make money while I hold it. And this is the only way. That's why these big companies are staking ETH, because they're generating heaps of revenue just staking the coins after they own them, and they're going to hold them for a minute. So again, Uniswap, Aave, and Morpho. That's straight from the Standard Charter's mouth. And I will say again, Standard Charter called 120 for the high, and we went up to 126. They called 58 for the low, and we went to 57 for the low so far. They said that's it. They're not going any lower. Some people will say it's going to go lower because of the whole 4-year cycle, but I'll say the last 4-year cycle peak last year didn't hit the levels it should have based on the previous 4-year cycles because there's institutional money in it now. So the same rules are going to apply. It's not probably going to, not financial, but I'm just saying, if it didn't hit the high levels and all those metrics that worked for the last 16 years didn't work this time, and it was lower than, because it didn't hit those higher peaks on those higher, trigger signals, then it's probably not going to go as low this time either with the institutional money. They see the confidence too. The reason people invest money is they think they're confident they're not going to lose their money when they put their money there. If you get something as a product to somebody and they continually lose money, nobody's going to want that product anymore. So they need to sell this tokenization. They need to sell cryptocurrency. They need to sell stable coins. They need to sell the new system to you in a way that you feel super confident that you're not going to lose money in it. They're actually going to gain money later. So they can't let this thing roll down to 30,000. Bitcoin ain't going to 40 this cycle. That would terrify people. Nobody would want to buy that or get in on it. They're offering all these stocks and like derivatives. They're offering these liquidity products on it and like financialization products from all this Bitcoin stuff with Sailor and Bitmine and all these things. You can't get mom and pop money and institution. You can't get other business money in there either, or mom and pop money in, if it's going to fall to such levels that it's going to wipe out half of your capital in a company. It just, those days are long gone. As we move forward from this point, it's going to be a controlled animal moving forward on how much it will be allowed to drop. And eventually they're going to smooth it out at a certain price. I'd seen some forecasts in the future at 10 million Bitcoin. It won't go any higher than that. And it sure ain't going to drop back 70% into a 3 million Bitcoin once it reaches that price. They're going to, once it gets up, they're going to try to level everything off so it stays in a band. And the whole world will have a certain amount of, they're losing $2 trillion a day, 2 trillion, T with a T, trillion, because the way we move money now is too slow, where if you could get money and then clear it in a matter of minutes or tens of minutes or under an hour, that unlocks that much money again to be used on the market around the world. And they were putting the number at 2 trillion a day as not being available out there because it's too slow the way we do it now. Just moving to a tokenized system will unlock $2 trillion in the global economy just like that. And that's Western economies. That doesn't include Africa and everything. That's just strictly us here in the West, like the 7 nations. 2 trillion amongst the 7 nations just for going to a tokenized system. But they got to sell everybody that your stocks, your 401k is safe by putting it into a Bitcoin fund. Your IRA is totally safe. It's not going to drop. If it does, just hold for a week or two and it'll pop back up. It's crypto, man. So they really need to sell everybody on the stability of it. And when will the cycle turn? That's Bank of America. I don't know where they were. They were egregious. So they were saying like 183,000 Bitcoin. We never got even close. It went to 126, not 180 some. So see, a lot of these banks that were calling these big numbers, I don't know how really reliable and accurate their forecasts are, although I will put my reputation and stick it and stand on Standard Charter right now because they've been the most correct. Now, they might fall out of favor next year, next month, whatever, but up to this date, just saying. Do your research wisely. Standard Charter, I got all the alerts and everything set up for them already because they're the only ones I want to follow anymore for pricing.
Well, too bad they didn't have a beef coin.
They need a beef coin.
Because
we should start beef coin. All right, anybody who wants to invest with us in beef coin.
Right. No, I was just, thinking about this, for a while that I know the cattle industry is hurting. So that means they have low numbers of beef. And so I got this article here talking about when would the beef be back? And they're talking about, how they're going to have to feed it and keep the heifers and then make the kids grow up until they're, available for more breeding. And we're talking no new, cheap beef until 2030. So if you could invest in the beef, 2030. See, let me get down here on this.
It's 4 years.
I'm just thinking,
just on a general basis, they say like 2.5 years to run that cycle you talked about. Heifers giving birth, they get big enough to slaughter or take them to milk or whatever.
Yeah, it says if ranchers begin saving heifer calves in 2026, those animals would be bred in 2027, calve in 28, and only begin adding to the supply in 2029 or 2030. And it's basically another guy saying the same thing. So it's just not going to be there until 2030 right here. We're talking about 2030 before those calves would be weaned and fed out and have an impact on the beef production. So I'm just wondering, what's the beef stock at like right now? Can I just buy it while it's not doing good and then sell it in 2030 when there's actually beef on the market and they're making money? Or would I have to wait till 2031 to see any profit off of it?
No, right now, since lean, the prices keep going up. I think ground beef, I saw the latest price around $7 a pound. If it gets leaner over these next 3 years until new market supply comes on, the price should go up over the next 2 to 3 years. Not financial advice, just like supply and demand mechanics on that one. So if there's less beef, price is going to get higher. So if they're already saying there's going to be less beef for the next 2 to 3 years, the price of the beef should continue to go up because there's less cattle. I know a guy named Landry. Shout out if you're watching or listening to us tonight. He's a cattle rancher, local guy, runs a few head, not like 1,000 head kind, but he got the most he ever sold for his cattle this year. Highest price ever paid for his herd this year. He sold everything. He's like, man, I'm out. That's the highest I ever got paid. They're all gone. So If this is like at the local level where he's like, man, I need to cash out, pay off some, and get back even again and do everything. That was a really good return on investment for that. Get rid of it all at this high price. Now it could go higher. And again, it could go lower. As all these guys I watch out here that are way smarter than me always say that at the end of their broadcast, they're like, nobody ever lost money taking profit. Right. Nobody ever lost money taking profits. That is so true. Like you already got one in the hand. Are you going to listen to Bank of America and wait till next year and maybe the price will drop back down $2 a pound or whatever? Damn it, I had it at that.
I'm just saying, man, should I make some money off of the misery of people's dinner plates? I mean, when we're always talking about these things, you have that conundrum. Do I invest in the things that I don't agree with because I know that they're going to make money? Like if you were to had invested last year or right before Trump got into most of the military industrial complex companies, the stocks would have went down and then you could have bought a bunch of them. And what it's looking like is those stocks are going to go back up steadily over the next few years. And that's because of what they're calling a prolonged conflict. And even if you don't have a prolonged conflict, from what I understand, now that they've doubled down on bombing and we're extending into like, I don't know, what is it, 120 or 130 days of this that we're looking at least 2 years of backed up money making. I mean, for a better term for it. So logistics, delivery, manufacturing, price rebounds, all of that stuff looks like we're looking at several years, which is weird that it always goes up to that 2030. It's a weird thing. It's almost like, when you're scrolling through the headlines and you're seeing 33 everywhere and people are like, oh, well, there's 33. They're always showing. Well, you see 2030 in every article about when things are going to be finalized as far as the change that they're making or the start of new trends and fads. That's the date that they give you for everything, including all the way back into and not limited to Agenda 2030 itself, which from my estimates is mostly complete and accomplished, despite, people saying that they beat it here or there. It's still happening. It's just moving along. It's a inevitable train.
Yeah, I would challenge everybody out there. Use your brain just for a second and then think back to the news articles you've read over let's say the last week or 2 weeks. How many of them reference like 2032 or 2035 or 2033? Because back in the year 2020, you would always see things about 2025, or even in the year 2015, you'd always see articles about 2025. They'd always project like 10 years into the future, something like this. But we're at 2026 and we're not even 4 years into, like I rarely, if ever, really see articles about 2031 or 2032. You're right, Ransom, it kind of hits that wall and it just doesn't progress past that wall of forecastable news, or like the genre and the generality of the way that our world's going to move in 2032 or 2033, or the way the economy is going to move. All I know is we're coming into a new system. It's going to be different. And in the beginning, there's going to be probably more opportunity than there will be later in the system. I'm just trying to position myself for, I don't know, getting ready for the change. I want to be protected in many ways because it can go many different directions and ways. I want to try to protect myself the best I can, because during this time, they're going to try to harvest a lot of wealth out of people to transition over to this new system. Because the more dependent you are on the system, the more control they have on you. So finances and money is the best way that they can do that. If they can really, like, so imagine if you swoop somebody and they worked for, say, 40 years, and then you take all their savings, or you take their house away from them or something. I mean, is there ways to protect against that? Well, you'd have to have a backup of something that could replace the value of the house. You're like, they stole it, rat bastards. I still got this other way I can go purchase or still live without the value of the house or the value of my money that they got in the bank, that they reset at 100 to 1, and now my 100,000's worth like, $1,000 or something. There's many ways this thing's going to be accomplished. They're not going to let everybody go quietly into the night and retain their wealth from this chapter. Think about it again, mining blocks in blockchain. All right, so this block has been mined, and when it ends, like it's ending now, we're at the final seconds of mining this block of our civilization. When it moves, the new block that starts next with the financial system is going to be under a new set of rules. It's a new set of value. The things you thought you owned, you don't really own. And you'll be explained in a very litigious way of all these 50 laws that you didn't know were written after the 2008 financial crisis, like David Rogers Webb does so well explaining in The Great Taking, the book and the documentary. You literally on paper right now don't own a single thing. After 2008, you should see the amount of legislation passed where the banks own it and they can call it in at any time and evict you out of your own home if you've made every single payment up to this point, never missed payment, paid the insurance companies, upkept and everything, and you have no outstanding liabilities except for the loan on your property. You can still evict you out and take your house back legally. So there's going to be so many things that are going to blindside people during this transition period here. And will it happen day one? No. It goes live completely in November. Obviously, people are going to make a lot of money through Christmas because they need you to believe in the system. So how does it transition through 2027? I don't know. Where does it go in 2028, 2 years after the system begins? Like that, I think, is 2028, 29 is when the real shenanigans are going to start to show themselves. What do you got there on the red?
Well, the entire time you were talking, Grok was thinking about the question I gave it, which was how many articles I misspelled, used 2030 in the date in the last 2 years. It says tens to hundreds of thousands of news articles and likely millions, all includes web content, mention of 2030 in the last 2 years, roughly mid 2024 to 2026. And look, what's the first common thing that's out there is Agenda 2030, a climate, environment, tech, AI, and other. But you notice that there's, when you're looking through these articles, see how many things they're actually telling you they have plans for that are past 2030. And you'll find out there ain't that many of them. They don't want you to think about or know what's happening after 2030. That's kind of the threshold that they had set for this reset. So they don't really even want you thinking too much past then or planning ahead. So if we're sitting here and we know that they legitly are just about resetting every aspect of the human domain, every network, every protocol that they have put in place to run things are all being reset, it's kind of hard to plan a future past that when you don't know what the trends are going to do. But what we do know that's going to happen is food production is going down at a pretty good steady rate for the last couple of years, and coming into this 2030 period, the nations of the world are ready to expand and can make conglomerates of their assets around the world. So I think we're right there at the 1984 2030 threshold there, like literally right at its doorstep.
Yeah, so I put in my search engine here, percentage of news articles written about dates after 2030, like 2031, 2032, 2033, versus articles written and forecasting for the year 2030. And it says, sorry, no relevant information was found in our search. What the hell? Come on, man. Really? You can't tell me that. That's impossible.
I guess we're just not interested in that far past it. Maybe Apophis is going to make a closer appearance than they're telling us that it will. And would they even tell you if something like that was going to happen? Of course not. They're not going to.
No.
But they would plan ahead. And, I've been thinking a lot about the history of the geology of the planet when it comes to impacts. And, my son was asking me about the Hunger Dryas thing, and I was telling him about, the whole Carolina Bays and the ideas behind that we probably got hit maybe possibly from the Taurid meteor stream. And that might have happened again in 536, but just not as extreme. And he was saying, well, how likely do you think it would, this disaster would still happen in the same place? And, judging by history, there's a good chance that it would come and hit the same areas on the earth. That would be the northern hemisphere. That seems to be where the majority of impact craters, at least visible to us on land, are at. Now, true, 70% of the ocean is covering the earth. I mean, 70% of the earth is covered by the ocean, and we really don't know how many impact craters or events are even out there. So all of that is missing. So just thinking about it on a logical term, 70% of the information is just not available or relevant, not only when it comes to human history, because all of that's covered up, and I wouldn't say it's at a 70%, but it would be an additional 10 to 20% of landmass that histories and events recorded happen. We just don't have access to that. So it seems like maybe if you were at the top of the echelon, you might be planning for a date and making all your programs for a date, and it seems like that date is around 2030. What they have in plan, still not sure, but I have a feeling that it's going to be famine, war, leading up to, and not after, but leading up to an event that they're waiting on. Just to soften everything.
One last point, signing off here tonight. Thank you for your valuable time. Staying with us here on the Civilization Cycle podcast, that the areas above ground that you're seeing now, the obliquity of our planet, if there were to be some sort of magnetic event on the sun that disrupts the magnetic field of our planet, areas of our planet would go sink and others would raise up as that magnetic field was reestablished and the planet started to spin at the same velocity or speed that it slowed down or stopped or reversed or tweaked for a minute. There's all kinds of stories about through history about the planet slowing down or it stops or it reverses. Like, this is a normal thing. Just if you go back through history, it's widely spoken about. So at some point on extremes, what we consider now mountain ranges above might very well sink completely below the ocean and be, 15,000 feet underwater, and new areas will rise out of the ocean. They did a very good example of that in that movie Day After Tomorrow. No, it wasn't day after tomorrow. It was 2012, where they showed that the Himalayan mountains had sunk all the way under the ocean, and they were thousands of feet deep under the ocean. And South Africa had risen above and was the new tallest mountain chain in the world. At that point, you won't find any of those craters because the up and down motion of continents going under or above, you get that 12,000 year window to find what happened for striking impactors for that 12,000 years of what it currently exists above the oceans as we currently speak. Because if it drops in that tectonic activity and just the amount of water washing in would probably erase every single crater that was there. I don't care how big it would be. If you're going to drop down miles under the ocean, that water rolling in on that would just scour everything. So I don't know if there would be much information visually left on that. So anyway, I'll close with that. Leave you with a little Thursday night goodness on the pole shift there. And join us again next week. Please remember to sign up for the Civilization Cycle podcast show notes. We'll get those out to you, 10 bullet points that were for tonight's show, and also show some support if you like this content. buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle, and also support our sponsors. You know, the ads we ran earlier today, Alpha Vedic with 2 Serum. You know, we got some very solid people with some great products for your body and mind and soul. You know, we believe in those products. That's why we feature them. So if you think one of those is going to help you, enhance your life, please remember, click on those links in the description box below. As well, to support the channel, every purchase you make helps keep us on air, bringing you information just like this.